You know that feeling when someone paints this incredible picture of what your future together will be, and you can almost see it. The romantic partner who's talking about marriage and kids by date 3. The boss who keeps dropping hints about that promotion coming any day now. The friend who swears they're about to pay you back that money they borrowed 6 months ago. And then, nothing. The future they described never actually arrives. I call this future faking. And let me tell you, it's one of the most powerful ways people keep us hooked while giving us absolutely nothing in return. And the crazy part, even the smartest, most level-headed people fall for it all the time. I first noticed this pattern years ago when working with a client I'll call Maya. She'd been with her boyfriend for 5 years. 5 years! And was still waiting for all these amazing plans to materialize. This guy had described their future home in vivid detail, right down to the color of the shutters. He'd named their future children. He talked about where they'd retire together. But whenever it came time to take an actual step toward any of these things, there was always some reason to wait. Always some excuse that sounded just reasonable enough. But he's so clear about our future, Maya told me, her eyes filling with tears. He talks about it in such detail. How could someone make all that up? And that's exactly why future faking works so well. It feels real because it's specific, it's detailed, it's delivered with such confidence and conviction. But here's the thing, words are free. Anyone can paint an elaborate picture of a wonderful future because it costs them absolutely nothing to do it. What's shocking is how many of us stay hooked on these empty promises for months, years, sometimes even decades. I see this in my own life too. I once had a business partner who was the absolute master of future faking. Every meeting ended with these grand visions of expansion, new revenue streams, incredible opportunities just around the corner. I'd leave those meetings feeling so energized, so excited about what was coming. 6 months in, I realized something. The ratio between what this person said and what they actually did was about 100 to 1. Tons of exciting talk, almost zero follow-through. But I stayed way longer than I should have because those visions were so compelling. I could almost taste the success he described. So why do even smart, successful people fall for this? What's happening in our brains? First, we're wired from childhood to believe that words and actions should match up. Remember when your parents said, "If you say you're going to do something, you do it." That fundamental trust is what makes society function. So when someone speaks with total conviction about future plans, our default setting is to believe them. Second, and this is fascinating, our brains actually release dopamine when we hear about positive future possibilities. That's the same brain chemical involved in addiction. We're literally getting high on the fantasy being presented to us, which makes us want more. I saw this with another client who kept going back to a manipulative boss despite clear evidence nothing would change. When he talks about my future at the company, she told me, "I get so excited, I can almost see it happening." She was getting a chemical reward just from these conversations, despite 2 years of broken promises. I bet you're thinking about someone in your life right now who does this, aren't you? Maybe it's that friend who's always talking about the amazing business you two should start together, but somehow never has time to discuss concrete details, or the partner who keeps saying they want to commit, but always has a reason why now isn't quite the right time. The tricky part is telling the difference between someone who genuinely plans to create a future with you and someone who's just stringing you along. Because let's be real, plans do change. Life happens. Not everyone who fails to deliver on every promise is a manipulator. The key difference is actually pretty simple. Actions versus words. Future fakers have an extremely high word-to-action ratio. They talk extensively about future plans, but take minimal concrete steps toward those goals. If someone talks endlessly about moving in together, but never actually looks at apartments with you, that's a red flag. I worked with a business partnership where one party was constantly describing expansion plans, new product lines, increased revenue sharing opportunities. "He's so visionary," his partner would say admiringly. But when we tracked the action-to-talk ratio for a month, we discovered that less than 5% of these plans ever translated into even the smallest actual step forward. People with genuine intentions are different. Their words are matched by consistent action, even if those actions are small initial steps. They don't just talk about moving in together. They send you apartment listings. They don't just mention promotion possibilities. They give you projects that build the skills you'd need. Another telltale sign is how someone responds when you try to pin down specifics. This is actually my favorite test. Next time someone makes a grand future promise, respond with, "That sounds amazing. What's our first step, and when should we take it?" Watch their reaction carefully. Future fakers typically respond in one of several ways. They suddenly become vague. "We'll do it when the time is right." They get defensive. "Don't you trust me?" They make you feel demanding. "Why are you rushing things?" They turn it back on you. "I thought you'd be more supportive." Someone with genuine intentions, on the other hand, welcomes clarity. They're comfortable discussing concrete steps, timelines, and potential obstacles. I remember a woman telling me how her partner responded when she tried to set a date for their often discussed vacation. Instead of picking a time, he accused her of always trying to nail everything down and not being spontaneous enough. Classic future, faking deflection. Another test that's surprisingly effective. Suggest writing down the plan with specific action steps and timelines. Someone who genuinely intends to follow through will have no problem with this. Someone who's future faking will find all kinds of reasons to keep things verbal and undefined. Now, here's something important to understand. Not all future fakers are malicious manipulators twirling their mustaches and plotting how to deceive you. Many genuinely believe their own promises in the moment. They get caught up in the excitement of possibility without connecting to the reality of what commitment requires. Others are conflict avoiders who would rather tell you what you want to hear than have a difficult conversation about differing goals or timelines. And some use future faking as a way to maintain control in a relationship by keeping you focused on a wonderful future. They ensure you won't leave despite an unsatisfying present. Understanding this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it helps you recognize it without immediately assuming the worst intentions. I was reminded of how complicated this can be when I encountered a situation with my own friend. someone I'll call Mark. For years, Mark had been talking about writing a novel. He'd describe the characters in vivid detail, explain the plot twists, even share the emotional impact he hoped it would have on readers. Whenever we got together, he'd update me on progress, but something felt off. When I gently asked about actual pages written, it became clear that despite years of talking about this book, he'd written less than 10 pages. But here's the complicated part. Mark wasn't trying to manipulate me. He genuinely saw himself as a novelist in process. The fantasy was so vivid to him that talking about it fulfilled the same emotional need as actually doing the work. He was future faking himself as much as anyone else. This helped me understand something important. Future faking exists on a spectrum. On one end are the conscious manipulators who strategically use promises to get what they want with zero intention of delivering. On the other end are the dreamers who genuinely believe their visions but lack the follow-through to make them real. Both can keep you hooked on empty promises, but recognizing where someone falls on the spectrum helps you respond appropriately. So what can you do if you realize someone's been future faking you? First, start paying attention to the ratio between what they say and what they actually do. This simple metric can be eye-opening. Words are easy. Actions take effort. Where is this person putting their actual effort? I had a friend who was dating a guy who constantly talked about introducing her to his family. For 2 years. Every few months, he'd bring it up again. We should really plan that trip to see my parents. But somehow it never materialized. When she finally tracked the pattern, she realized he'd mentioned meeting his family at least 15 times, but had never once followed up with a concrete plan. That ratio told her everything she needed to know. Another helpful approach: request specific timelines and steps. That sounds great. Let's figure out what needs to happen first. Future fakers hate this because it threatens to transform their beautiful, vague someday into a concrete now that requires actual commitment. And don't be afraid to document agreements. Not in a confrontational way, but as a helpful reminder. Something like, I'm excited about our plan to move in together in June. I'm making a note in my calendar so we can start looking at apartments in April. Someone with genuine intentions won't mind this kind of clarity. You can also try sharing the plan with others when appropriate. I'd love to tell my parents about our plan to visit them next summer. Is that okay? Someone with genuine intentions won't mind appropriate transparency. Someone who's future faking will often want to keep plans private. Because the more people who know about them, the more accountability there is. I know a woman who had been promised a promotion by her boss for over a year. Every time she mentioned it to colleagues, her boss would pull her aside afterward and explain why they needed to keep it just between them for now. Classic future faking technique. Keep the promises isolated so no one else can hold you accountable. But what about when you're dealing with someone who's more of a dreamer than a manipulator? Someone who genuinely believes their own future faking? This requires a slightly different approach. Rather than confronting them about dishonesty, which they'll deny because in their minds they are being honest, focus on concrete steps and timelines. Help them connect their vision to reality by breaking it down into actionable parts. With my friend Mark, I shifted from listening to his novel descriptions to asking what specific writing goals he had for the week. I offered to check in on those concrete goals rather than discussing the big vision. This either helps dreamers start turning their talk into action, or it helps them and you see the pattern more clearly. I know it can be painful to realize someone's been stringing you along with empty promises. It's normal to feel foolish for believing, to question your judgment, or to struggle with trusting again. But please remember, falling for future faking doesn't mean you're naive or gullible. This tactic exploits fundamental human psychology that affects even the savviest people. In fact, your susceptibility to future faking probably speaks to some of your best qualities. Your capacity for hope, your trust in others, your ability to envision positive possibilities. Those are strengths, not weaknesses. A client once told me that discovering she'd been future faked felt like grieving a death, except the person she was grieving never actually existed. That's a profound insight. Even though the promised future wasn't real, your hopes and emotional investment definitely were. Allow yourself to acknowledge that loss. The healing process after future faking can be challenging because it's not just about getting over a disappointment. It's about rebuilding trust in your own judgment. Many people swing from being too trusting to being overly skeptical, unable to believe any promises at all. I worked with a woman who, after being future faked in a 5-year relationship, became so distrustful that she couldn't accept even small, reasonable promises from new partners. When someone said they'd call tomorrow, she assumed they wouldn't. When a date was planned, she expected cancellation. This protective mechanism was understandable, but ultimately created new problems. The healthier middle ground is learning to calibrate your trust based on evidence. This doesn't mean becoming cynical. It means developing a balanced approach that honors both possibility and reality. Start by looking for consistency between words and actions in all areas of someone's life, not just their promises to you. How do they treat commitments in general? Do they follow through on small things consistently? Do they acknowledge when they fail to deliver rather than pretending they never promised? People who are trustworthy show it in 1,000 small ways. They call when they say they will. They remember what matters to you. They admit when they've made a mistake rather than making excuses. These everyday behaviors tell you far more about someone's reliability than their grand declarations about the future. I also encourage you to pay attention to how someone responds when circumstances genuinely prevent them from keeping a promise. Trustworthy people acknowledge the broken commitment, take responsibility, and make amends. They don't pretend they never made the promise, blame you for misunderstanding, or make it seem like you're overreacting. I had a client whose partner habitually made and broke promises about spending time together. When called on it, he'd say things like, "I never specifically said Saturday," or "You're being way too demanding," or "I can't believe you're making such a big deal about this." These responses are major red flags. They indicate someone who won't take responsibility even for small disappointments. Another crucial aspect of healing is learning to distinguish between your genuine intuition and fear-based reactions. After being future-faked, many people dismiss their gut feelings, thinking, I was wrong before, so I can't trust my instincts. But often, there were warning signs that your intuition picked up. You just overrode them because the promises were so appealing. Take time to reflect on the relationship where you experienced future faking. Were there moments when something felt off but you ignored it? Did friends or family express concerns that you dismissed? These weren't failures of intuition. They were instances where your inner wisdom was actually working. But other factors led you to disregard it. Understanding this can help you regain trust in yourself. Your intuition wasn't broken. You just need practice, listening to it more carefully, and giving it more weight when it conflicts with what you want to believe. One practical exercise I recommend to clients is keeping a small notebook where you jot down moments when your gut sends you a signal, positive or negative, about someone's reliability. Later, you can look back and see how accurate those intuitive hits were. This helps rebuild trust in your own perceptions. The most painful aspect of future faking isn't just the disappointment when promises don't materialize, it's the opportunity cost. The time and emotional energy you might have invested elsewhere if you hadn't been hooked by empty promises. The years spent waiting for someone to follow through rather than building a life with someone who actually shows up. I think about my client who waited 5 years for her boyfriend to make good on his promises. Years during which she could have been finding someone who genuinely wanted the future she desired. Or the professional who stayed in a dead-end job for years because of promises about advancement that never materialized. Time that could have been spent building a career elsewhere. This is why recognizing future faking early is so valuable. It's not just about avoiding disappointment. It's about freeing yourself to pursue connections with people who don't just talk about building something meaningful with you, but actually show up and do the work to make it happen. The good news is that once you recognize the pattern, you really can protect yourself. You can learn to distinguish between empty words and genuine commitment. You can train yourself to look for that crucial alignment between what someone says and what they actually do. Does this mean you should become cynical and never believe in promising futures? Absolutely not. Some of the most beautiful aspects of human connection involve creating visions together and working toward them. The issue isn't with having hopes and dreams. It's with discerning which ones are connected to reality. When you find people whose actions consistently match their words, even in small ways, that's where you can invest your trust and your heart. Those are the people who might promise less but deliver more. They're the ones who might occasionally disappoint you because they're human, but who take responsibility and make amends when they do. These authentic relationships might not always give you the dopamine high that comes from grandiose future promises. They might feel more grounded, more gradual in their unfolding, but they offer something far more valuable: a future you can actually count on, built step by step through consistent action, rather than elaborate fantasy. So let me ask you, who in your life might be future faking you right now? And what small test could you do this week to see if their beautiful promises are matched by actual commitment? The answer might just free you to find something real, because here's what I've learned after years of watching this pattern play out. The most reliable predictor of someone's future behavior isn't what they promise. It's what they actually do, consistently, even when it's difficult, even when no one is watching. The person who quietly follows through on small commitments day after day is infinitely more trustworthy than the one who makes elaborate promises but rarely delivers. And recognizing the difference isn't just about avoiding manipulation. It's about creating space in your life for relationships built on substance rather than fantasy. You deserve more than beautiful words. You deserve the beautiful reality that comes from connections with people who actually show up, follow through, and build something real with you, one consistent action at a time. That's a future truly worth believing in.